I trusted my daughter-in-law like she was my own daughter, right up until the moment she spoke for me at the bank. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind where the sun comes through the windows just right, and you feel like maybe, just maybe, you're getting the hang of being alone. I'd driven myself to the branch on Maple Street, the one I'd been going to for 30 years. Same teller windows, same smell of coffee from the break room, same fluorescent lights that buzz if you listen close enough. But nothing felt the same the second Claire walked in behind me. I didn't ask her to come. Didn't even know she was following me until I heard her heels click across that polished floor. She smiled at me like we'd planned this together. Like it was the most natural thing in the world for her to slide into the chair next to mine while I waited for the manager. "Thought you might want some company," she said, patting my hand. The manager, Todd, I think his name was, came out with a folder and a tired smile. I'd called ahead about updating my account information. Nothing major. Just making sure everything was in order after my husband passed. Simple. Routine. But before I could say a word, Claire leaned forward. "She gets confused lately," she said, her voice sweet as honey and twice as sticky. "That's why I'm here. To help clarify things." I felt my face flush. Todd looked at me, then at her, then back at me with this expression I'd seen before, the one people wear when they think you're fragile, breakable, forgettable. "Mrs. Brennan is perfectly capable of," Todd started, but Claire cut him off. "Of course she is. But you know how it is?" She gave him this knowing look, this little conspiratorial smile that said, "We both understand what's really happening here. I've been helping her organize her accounts." She didn't mention that. I opened my mouth to say no. I absolutely did not mention that because it never happened, but Todd was already nodding, flipping through papers, and Claire was pulling something out of her purse. A small notebook. Slim, navy blue. She opened it like she'd done this 100 times before. "I have all her information here," she said, running her finger down a page. "Social Security, Medicare, account numbers. We've been working on getting everything in one place so she doesn't have to worry." Todd glanced at me again. "Mrs. Brennan, is this correct? Have you authorized someone to help manage your accounts?" "Aye, she has," Claire interrupted, still smiling. "We talked about it last month, didn't we?" I stared at her. "We didn't. We never did." But the way she said it, with that gentle, patient tone, like she was reminding a child about something they'd forgotten, it made me doubt myself for half a second. And that half second was all she needed. Todd cleared his throat. "Well, if there are going to be any changes to account access, we'll need documentation. Power of attorney, notarized signatures, that kind of thing." Claire didn't miss a beat. "Already working on it. Already working on it." Those words hit me like cold water. I hadn't asked her to work on anything, hadn't signed anything, hadn't even thought about power of attorney. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said, finally finding my voice. "I came here to update my address. That's all." Claire touched my arm. "Mom, we talked about this. You wanted to make sure everything was taken care of in case you needed help down the line." "Mom," she called me Mom. She'd done that since the funeral, like we were closer now, like grief had erased boundaries. I'd liked it at first, thought it meant she cared. Now it sounded like a cage door closing. Todd looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. "Why don't I make some copies of what we'll need, and you two can discuss this at home? We can schedule another appointment once everything's ready." Claire stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Perfect. Thank you, Todd." She walked out before I could say anything else, that notebook tucked back into her purse like it belonged there, like my life belonged there. I followed her to the parking lot, the morning sun suddenly too bright, too hot. Through the glass door, I watched her stop by her car, pull out her phone, and start typing something. Fast, focused. Then she opened the notebook again and wrote something down. I stood there, keys in my hand, feeling something shift inside me. Not panic? Not yet. But something close. Something that whispered in the back of my mind like a draft under a door. What exactly was she writing? And how long had she been keeping track? The house felt different when I got home. Not in any way I could point to. Exactly. The furniture was where it should be. The mail sat in its usual spot on the kitchen counter. The coffee maker was still warm from this morning. But something was off, like when you walk into a room and know someone's been there, even though nothing looks touched. I set my purse down and tried to shake off what happened at the bank. Claire meant well. She had to. She'd been so attentive since Robert died, always checking in, always offering to help, always there. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe she really was just trying to organize things for me. Except we never talked about power of attorney. I was sure of that. I walked through the living room, running my hand along the back of the couch where Robert used to sit. 3 months gone, and I still expected to see him there. Newspaper folded in his lap, reading glasses sliding down his nose. The silence was the worst part. Not the kind that feels peaceful, the kind that presses in on you until you have to turn on the TV. Just to remember what other voices sound like. I went to the kitchen to make tea, and that's when I noticed it. The bills weren't where I left them. I keep them in a basket by the phone, sorted by due date. It's a system I've had for years. Robert used to tease me about it, said I ran the house like a small government office. But now, looking at that basket, everything was ... rearranged. Shuffled. Like someone had gone through them and put them back wrong. My chest tightened. I pulled the stack out and started flipping through. Electric bill, water bill, property tax notice, all there. But underneath was something I didn't recognize. An envelope from the bank, already opened. Inside was a form I'd never seen before. Something about account beneficiaries and authorized users, partially filled out. In handwriting that wasn't mine. I set it down on the counter like it might burn me. Think, I told myself. Think. When did this get here? Who opened my mail? Claire had been by yesterday. Said she wanted to drop off some groceries, that I shouldn't be lifting heavy bags at my age. She'd stayed for coffee. We talked about her daughter's college applications, about the weather, about nothing important. I'd gone upstairs to get my reading glasses. How long was I gone? 5 minutes. 10? Long enough. I walked to the study, Robert's study, though I couldn't bring myself to change anything in there yet, and opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. The one where I kept important documents. Social Security card, Medicare information, the deed to the house, insurance policies. Everything was still there, but it had been moved. I could tell because I always kept the insurance folder on top, and now it was third in the stack. My hands started to shake. I pulled everything out and laid it across the desk, scanning each page for something. Anything that would tell me what she'd been looking for. And that's when I saw it, tucked between 2 folders like it had been slipped back in a hurry. A notebook. Small, navy blue. Not mine. I opened it. The first page had my name at the top. Eleanor Brennan. Underneath, a list of dates and times, written in Claire's neat, slanted handwriting. 9:15, left for grocery store. Last DSE train to AM, returned 11:45 AM, 9:18, doctor's appointment. 2 p.m. 9:20 church, 9 a.m. Stayed for coffee hour, 9:29 lunch with Margaret, 12:30 p.m. page after page. My entire routine, tracked like I was a subject in some kind of study. Everywhere I went. How long I was gone. Who I saw. I turned the page and found something worse. A list of accounts? Bank account numbers? The last 4 digits of my Social Security? My Medicare ID? All things she would have had to search for. All things I never gave her. And at the bottom of the page, in red ink, a single word circled 3 times. Attorney. Underneath it, a phone number. A local one. And a date. Next week. I sat down hard in Robert's chair, the notebook open in my lap, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. She wasn't helping me organize my life. She was planning to take it. The question I couldn't stop asking myself was simple, and it made my stomach turn. If she'd been tracking me for weeks, writing down every move I made, every place I went, what else had she already done that I didn't know about? I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that notebook. My routines written out like evidence. My accounts listed like inventory. That circled date next Tuesday, burning in my mind like a countdown. By morning, I'd made a decision. If Claire had contacted an attorney, I needed to know why. And I needed to know before Tuesday. The phone number in her notebook led to a small office on the edge of town. The kind tucked between a dry cleaner and her insurance agency in one of those strip malls that always looks half empty. Morton and Associates? Estate planning. I'd driven past it 100 times and never given it a second thought. Now I was pulling into the parking lot at 9 in the morning, my hands gripping the steering wheel too tight. The waiting room was beige and quiet, decorated with stock photos of happy elderly couples and pamphlets about wills and trusts. A young woman sat behind the reception desk, typing on her computer with the kind of speed that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. I approached the desk and cleared my throat. "Excuse me? My name is Eleanor Brennan. I believe someone may have called about me." She looked up, her expression shifting from bored to cautious in an instant. "Mrs. Brennan?" "Yes." She hesitated, glancing toward the closed door behind her, like she was hoping someone else would handle this. Let me check." She clicked through something on her screen, then looked back at me with that expression I was starting to recognize. The one that said, "Oh, this is awkward." "Yes, we did receive a call. About 2 weeks ago. Someone inquiring about our services on your behalf." "On my behalf? What kind of services?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would make my skin crawl. Well, the caller was asking about power of attorney documents, financial and medical. She said you were having some memory issues and wanted to get things in order before she stopped herself, like she'd said too much. Before what? The receptionist shifted in her seat. Before things got worse. Those were her words, not mine. I felt something cold settle in my chest. "And did you schedule an appointment?" "We have one on the books for next Tuesday, 10 a.m. The caller said she'd bring you in, that you'd need someone to help you with the paperwork." "Help me with the paperwork?" Like I was a child who couldn't read. "Did this person give you a name?" I asked, though I already knew. "Claire Brennan. She said she was your daughter-in-law, that she'd been managing some of your affairs already and wanted to make it official." The receptionist paused, then added carefully, "We do get a lot of calls like this. Adult children concerned about their parents. It's actually very common when memory becomes a concern." There it was again. Memory. Like my age explained everything. Like being 72 meant I couldn't be trusted to know my own mind. "I don't have memory issues," I said, keeping my voice steady. "And I never authorized anyone to make that call." Her eyes widened slightly. "Oh, I need to know exactly what was discussed." She clicked through her screen again, clearly uncomfortable. The caller asked about our process for elderly clients who might need assistance completing documents. She specifically mentioned that you sometimes forget bill due dates and get confused about financial matters. She wanted to know if we could expedite the process, given your ... situation. My situation? My invented situation. And what did you tell her? I explained that we'd need to meet with you directly, assess your understanding of the documents, and ensure you were signing of your own free will. It's standard protocol. We can't just process power of attorney without the principal being present and competent to consent. And what did she say to that? The receptionist looked down at her notes. She said that wouldn't be a problem, that you'd be very cooperative once you understood it was for your own protection. The room felt smaller, suddenly, warmer. I gripped the edge of the desk. Is there something wrong, Mrs. Brennan?" The receptionist asked. "Do you have someone helping you make decisions lately? Because if there's any question of undue influence, I need to cancel that appointment," I interrupted. "And I need you to note in your system that I did not authorize anyone to inquire about these services on my behalf." She nodded quickly. "Typing?" "Of course. I'll make a note right now." "And Mrs. Brennan?" She looked up at me with something like sympathy. "If someone is trying to pressure you into signing documents you don't want to sign, there are resources. Legal aid, adult protective services. Thank you," I said, cutting her off before my voice could crack. "I'll handle it." I walked out into the parking lot, the morning sun too bright again, everything feeling too sharp and too real. I sat in my car and stared at the office door, my mind racing. Tuesday. That was in 3 days. 3 days until Claire planned to walk me into that office, sit me down in front of a lawyer, and have me sign away control of my own life. 3 days until she made it official. How long had she been planning this? Since Robert died? Since before? And if she'd already contacted an attorney, already built a case that I was confused and forgetful, already positioned herself as the concerned family member just trying to help, what else had she already set in motion that I didn't know about yet? The phone call came early the next morning. I was standing in the kitchen, staring at my coffee like it might have answers, when my cell phone buzzed on the counter. Claire's name lit up the screen. For a second, I considered not answering, but that would raise questions I wasn't ready to answer yet. So I picked up. "Morning, Mom," she said, bright and chipper. "How are you feeling?" "I'm fine." "Good. Listen, I made you an appointment for this morning. Just a quick checkup. I know you've been feeling a little off lately." I hadn't been feeling off, hadn't mentioned feeling off. What kind of appointment? With Dr. Patterson's office. You remember Dr. Patterson, right? Your primary care doctor? I knew Dr. Patterson. Had been seeing him for 15 years. But I hadn't called his office in months. "Claire, I didn't ask you to. I know. But I was talking to Daniel last night, and we both think it's a good idea to have someone check in on you, just to make sure everything's okay. Grief does strange things to people, you know? It's normal to feel a little scattered. Scattered. That word again, dressed up nice and polite. "I'm not scattered," I said. "Of course not. But it won't hurt to have a conversation with the doctor, right? I already confirmed the appointment 10:30. I'll pick you up at 10. She hung up before I could say no. I stood there holding the phone, that cold feeling spreading through my chest again. She'd made a medical appointment for me, without asking, and from the way she said it, we both think it's a good idea. She'd already talked to my son, already painted a picture of a mother who needed intervention. I called Dr. Patterson's office myself. The receptionist answered on the 3rd ring, her voice pleasant and professional. "Dr. Patterson's office. This is Denise. This is Eleanor Brennan. I understand someone made an appointment for me this morning." "Oh yes, Mrs. Brennan. Your daughter-in-law called yesterday. She mentioned you've been having some memory concerns and wanted to schedule a wellness check." Memory concerns. There it was. The official narrative. "What exactly did she say?" I asked, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. I heard papers shuffling. "Let me pull up the notes." "Okay, here we are." "She reported that you've been forgetting to pay bills on time, getting confused about dates, and having trouble keeping track of appointments. She said she's worried about early cognitive decline and wanted to get ahead of it." Early cognitive decline. The words hit me like a slap. She'd called my doctor's office and diagnosed me with something I didn't have, put it in my medical record like it was fact. "I don't have memory problems," I said slowly, carefully. "I pay my bills on time. I keep track of my appointments. This is a misunderstanding." There was a pause, a long one. "Mrs. Brennan, it's actually very common for patients to not recognize their own symptoms. That's part of why family members often notice first." And there it was. The assumption. The dismissal. She believed Claire over me, without question, because Claire was younger. Because Claire sounded concerned. Because I was 72, and that was all the evidence anyone needed. "I'd like to speak with Dr. Patterson directly," I said. "He's with a patient right now, but I can have him call you back. Your appointment is still on the books for 10:30 if you'd like to come in and discuss this." "I'll be there," I said. "But I'm driving myself." I hung up before she could respond. By the time Claire pulled into my driveway at 10, I was already standing by my car, purse in hand. She rolled down her window, looking confused. "Mom, I thought I was taking you. I can drive myself to the doctor. Are you sure?" "I don't mind, I'm sure." Something flickered across her face. Annoyance, maybe. Or calculation. But she covered it with a smile. "Okay. I'll meet you there then. Just in case you need someone to help explain things to the doctor." Help explain things. Like I couldn't speak for myself? I watched her drive away, then got in my own car and followed at a distance. The whole drive, my mind kept circling back to those notes in her notebook. The tracking, the attorney, now this. She was building a case, piece by piece, appointment by appointment. And if I let her walk into that exam room with me, if I let her describe symptoms I didn't have to, a doctor who already believed I was declining, how long before it stopped being her word against mine? When I walked into Dr. Patterson's office, Denise looked up from the desk with a practiced smile. I signed in, my hand steady, and watched her slide a clipboard toward me. Standard forms, insurance information, emergency contact. Except these forms were already partially filled out. In handwriting that wasn't mine. And at the top of the page, in the section labeled Reason for Visit, someone had written in neat, slanted letters, "Cognitive assessment requested by family." I looked up at Denise. "Who filled this out?" She glanced at the clipboard. "Oh, your daughter-in-law dropped off some updated paperwork earlier this week. She said she wanted to make sure everything was current." Earlier this week, before she even told me about the appointment, I stared at those words, "Cognitive assessment requested by family," and felt the trap closing around me, one form at a time. The door to the waiting room opened. Claire walked in, smiling, holding 2 cups of coffee like we were just here for a casual chat. "Got you a latte," she said sweetly. "Thought you might need it." But I was looking past her, at the envelope tucked under her arm. White, legal-sized, and on the front, in handwriting I now knew too well, one word: capacity. Dr. Patterson was younger than me by maybe 15 years, with silver hair and the kind eyes of someone who'd spent decades listening to people's problems. I'd always trusted him. But sitting in that exam room, watching Claire hover near the door like a bailiff, I wondered if trust was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. "So, Eleanor," Dr. Patterson said, glancing at his chart. "I understand there've been some concerns lately." Before I could answer, Claire stepped forward. "She's been forgetting things. Dr. Littell thinks at first where she put her keys, whether she took her medication, but it's gotten worse. Last week she couldn't remember if she'd paid the electric bill. I had paid the electric bill. On time. Like I always did. Is that true, Eleanor?" Dr. Patterson asked, looking at me directly. "No," I said. "I paid it on the 10th. Same day I always pay it." Claire made a soft sound, sympathetic and sad. "See, she thinks she paid it, but when I checked, the account was overdue. I had to take care of it myself." Dr. Patterson made a note. I watched his pen move across the paper and felt something inside me start to crack. "Eleanor, I'm going to ask you some questions," he said gently. "Just standard screening. Nothing to worry about. Can you tell me what day it is?" "Thursday, October 17th. "And who's the president?" I answered. Then he asked me to count backward from 100 by sevens, to remember 3 words, and repeat them back later, to draw a clock showing a specific time. Every question felt like a test I didn't know I was taking. Every answer felt like it could be used against me. And through it all, Claire stood there, watching, her face arranged in an expression of loving concern that made my skin crawl. When Dr. Patterson finished, he set down his pen and looked at me carefully. "Eleanor, your responses are all within normal range. You're clearly oriented and coherent." I felt a rush of relief so strong it almost made me dizzy. "But," he continued, and my stomach dropped, "that doesn't mean we shouldn't take your daughter-in-law's concerns seriously. Sometimes cognitive decline is subtle. Sometimes patients can perform well in a clinical setting but struggle at home." "I don't struggle at home," I said. Claire touched my shoulder. "Mom, it's okay." "Nobody's saying you don't," I said, pulling away from her hand. "Don't touch me." The room went very quiet. Dr. Patterson looked between us, his expression shifting from clinical to cautious. "Perhaps it would be better if I spoke with Mrs. Brennan alone for a moment." Claire's smile tightened. "I don't think that's necessary. She might get confused without its protocol," a new voice said from the doorway. We all turned. A woman stood there, maybe 50, with dark hair pulled back and an ID badge that read Rachel Chun, MSW, a social worker. Hospital policy requires that we speak with patients privately during any assessment that involves questions of capacity. Rachel said, her tone professional but firm. "It ensures we're getting an accurate picture of the patient's wishes and understanding." Claire's face went blank for just a second, like a mask slipping. Then the smile came back. "Of course, I understand. I'll just be in the waiting room." She left, but not before glancing back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Warning, maybe, or calculation. When the door closed, Rachel moved to sit in the chair Claire had vacated. "Mrs. Brennan, I'm a medical social worker. I work with patients and families to navigate care decisions. Dr. Patterson asked me to check in because there seems to be some disagreement about your level of functioning." "I'm functioning fine," I said, and I hated how defensive I sounded. "I believe you," Rachel said simply. "Your screening results support that. But I need to ask, do you feel pressured by your family to make any decisions you're not comfortable with?" The question landed like a stone in still water. For a moment, I couldn't speak. "Mrs. Brennan? She's been tracking me," I said quietly. "My daughter-in-law? Writing down everywhere I go, every account I have. She contacted an attorney without telling me. She made this appointment and told you I was declining when I'm not." Rachel's expression didn't change, but she pulled out a small notepad. "How long has this been happening?" "I don't know. Weeks, maybe? I only found out a few days ago." "And your son? Is he involved?" "I don't think he knows what she's really doing. She's made it sound like she's helping me, like I need help." Rachel was quiet for a moment, writing. Then she looked up at me with steady, serious eyes. "Mrs. Brennan, what you're describing could constitute financial exploitation or undue influence, especially if she's trying to gain access to your accounts or legal authority without your consent. Have you signed anything? Given her power of attorney?" "No, nothing." "Good. Don't." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a card. "This is my direct line. If anyone tries to pressure you into signing documents, or if you feel unsafe, call me. We can arrange for an independent capacity evaluation if needed. One that's not influenced by family testimony." I took the card, my hands shaking slightly. "What do I do?" "Document everything," Rachel said. "If she's tracking you, you need to track her. Save any evidence you have. Notebooks, messages, recordings, if you can get them. And consider speaking with an attorney yourself. Someone who represents your interests, not hers." Dr. Patterson cleared his throat. "I'll note in your chart that you showed no signs of cognitive impairment during today's evaluation. That should help if questions come up later." "Thank you," I whispered. Rachel stood, but paused at the door. Mrs. Brennan. Older patients often mask confusion. That's what family members will say when they're trying to override your autonomy. Don't let anyone use that line on you. You know your own mind. When they left, I sat alone in that exam room for a long moment, Rachel's card pressed between my palms. For the first time in days, I didn't feel crazy. I felt angry. And anger, I was starting to realize, might be the thing that saved me. Claire was waiting for me in the parking lot, leaning against her car with her phone in her hand. She looked up when I walked out, her expression carefully neutral. "How did it go?" she asked. "Fine." "What did Dr. Patterson say?" "That I'm healthy?" I kept walking toward my car, keys already in my hand. She followed me. "Did he talk to you about the cognitive screening?" "I know it can be uncomfortable, but it's really for the best. There's nothing wrong with my cognition, Claire." She touched my arm, and I jerked away harder than I meant to. Her eyes widened, hurt blooming across her face like I'd struck her. "Mom, I'm just trying to help." "Stop calling me that," I said quietly. "And stop helping." I got in my car before she could respond, hands trembling as I started the engine. Through the windshield, I watched her stand there for a moment, phone still in her hand, that wounded expression fading into something else. Something colder. Then she lifted her phone and started typing. By the time I got home, I felt wrung out. Exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the drive. I made tea, I didn't drink, and sat at the kitchen table, Rachel's card in front of me like a talisman. "Document everything," she'd said. I went to the study and pulled out Claire's notebook again, photographing every page with my phone. The dates, the account numbers, the attorney's information. Then I put it back exactly where I'd found it, because I needed her to think I hadn't discovered it yet. The mail came at 2 o'clock. I heard it drop through the slot and went to gather it from the floor. Bills, mostly. A flyer for gutter cleaning. And an envelope from my bank. From the branch on Maple Street. The one where Claire had spoken for me. My pulse quickened as I opened it. Important notice. Change of address request. I read the letter twice, 3 times, the words blurring together. Someone had submitted a request to redirect my bank statements to a different address. Not my house. Somewhere in the next county? A P.O. box I'd never heard of. The letter said I had 5 business days to confirm or cancel the change before it went into effect. 5 days. I checked the date on the letter. It had been mailed 3 days ago, which meant I had 2 days left. 2 days before my financial statements started going somewhere I couldn't see them. I grabbed my phone and called the bank, my hand shaking so hard I almost dropped it. "First National, this is Kevin. How can I help you?" "This is Eleanor Brennan. I received a letter about a change of address request that I never made. Let me pull up your account. Mrs. Brennan." I heard typing. "Okay, yes, I see the request here. Submitted online on October 10th. October 10th. The day after Robert's funeral." "I didn't submit that," I said. "Someone accessed my account without permission." More typing. A pause. "Mrs. Brennan, according to our records, the request came from an IP address that's been used to access your account multiple times over the past few weeks. And there's a note here that you've authorized a family member to help manage your banking." "I never authorized anyone." "The note says your daughter-in-law has been assisting you due to memory issues." My vision blurred at the edges. "I don't have memory issues. This is fraud." "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but we have protocols for these situations. If there's a dispute about account access, you'll need to come in and file a formal complaint. And we'll need documentation that the person in question doesn't have your permission. I'm telling you right now, she doesn't have my permission. We'll need it in writing. And we'll need to verify your identity and capacity to manage the account independently." Capacity. That word again, like a noose tightening. "I'll be there tomorrow morning," I said, and hung up before he could say anything else. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at that letter, feeling the walls close in. She'd tried to redirect my mail. Had probably already succeeded with other accounts I didn't know about yet. And the bank believed her story about my supposed confusion because why wouldn't they? She sounded so reasonable, so concerned, so helpful. The front door opened. I shoved the letter into my purse and looked up to see Daniel, my son, standing in the doorway with his key still in his hand. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd been sent on an errand he didn't want to run. "Hey, Mom?" "Daniel." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "What are you doing here?" "Claire called. She said you were upset at the doctor's office, that you seemed confused." He came into the kitchen, hands in his pockets. "She's worried about you." "I'm not confused." "She said you pulled away from her, got angry for no reason." "There was a reason." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Mom, I know it's been hard since Dad died, and I know you want to feel independent. But Claire's just trying to help. We both are. Maybe it's time to think about accepting that help." I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I'd raised, the man who looked so much like his father it hurt, and saw a stranger. Someone who'd already decided I was the problem. "Did she tell you she contacted an attorney about power of attorney without asking me?" I said quietly. He blinked. "What?" "Did she tell you she tried to change the address on my bank accounts? Or that she's been tracking everywhere I go?" "Mom," Betsy stopped, shook his head. "You're not making sense." "I'm making perfect sense. You're just not listening. Claire loves you. We both do. And if you're starting to see things that aren't there, that's exactly why we need to make sure someone's looking out for you. Seeing things that aren't there." The phrase hit me like cold water. That's what she'd told him. That I was paranoid, delusional, that my accusations were symptoms, not facts. And he believed her. "Get out," I said softly. "Mom, get out of my house." He stood there for a moment, looking torn between anger and pity, and I couldn't decide which was worse. Then he left, taking his key with him, and I heard his car pull out of the driveway. I sat alone in my kitchen as the afternoon light faded, the letter from the bank in my purse, Rachel's card on the table, and one question burning in my mind. If Claire had already convinced my own son I was losing my mind, if she'd already planted flags in my bank accounts and my medical records and my future, what would happen when I tried to prove I wasn't? I didn't go to the bank the next morning. I did something smarter. I called Rachel Chun. She answered on the second ring, her voice professional but warm. "Mrs. Brennan, are you all right? I need help," I said. "And I need to know what my rights are." We met at a coffee shop 2 towns over, far enough that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. Rachel arrived with a leather portfolio and the kind of focused attention that made me feel, for the first time in weeks, like someone was actually listening. I showed her everything. The notebook with my routines tracked like a surveillance log. Photos of the partially filled forms, the letter from the bank about the address change, the attorney's office card with the appointment circled in red. She didn't interrupt, just took notes, asked clarifying questions, and when I finished, looked at me with an expression that was half concern, half anger. "This is textbook financial exploitation," she said. "And the fact that she's creating a paper trail suggesting cognitive decline makes it worse. She's building a case to have you declared incompetent." The word hit me like a fist. Incompetent? Can she do that? Not without a court order. But if she can get enough people to believe you're declining doctors, banks, family members, she can make your life very difficult. Challenge every decision you make. Tie up your assets in legal disputes. Rachel leaned forward. "You need documentation showing this is fraud, not confusion. Do you have access to your bank accounts online?" "Yes." "Good. Pull your transaction history going back 3 months. Look for anything you didn't authorize. Withdrawals, transfers, unusual activity." She paused. "And check your voicemail, both your cell and home phone. If she's been impersonating you to financial institutions, there might be records." I hadn't thought of that. We spent the next hour at that coffee shop, Rachel walking me through what to look for, who to contact, how to protect myself legally. She gave me the number of an elder law attorney who specialized in financial exploitation cases, told me to change my passwords, check my credit report, and consider filing a police report if I found evidence of fraud. By the time I got home, I had a plan. And for the first time since I'd found that notebook, I felt like I might actually survive this. I sat down at my computer and logged into my bank account, pulling up 3 months of transaction history. At first, nothing looked unusual. Bills paid on time, grocery store purchases, the occasional withdrawal for cash. Then I saw it. A transfer I didn't recognize. $200 moved from checking to savings on September 23rd. Not a huge amount, but I hadn't made that transfer. Didn't even know my checking account was linked to savings anymore. Robert had always handled that. I scrolled further and found 2 more. Small amounts, spread out over weeks. Whoever was doing this was being careful, moving money in increments that wouldn't trigger automatic fraud alerts. My hands were shaking as I checked my voicemail next, starting with my cell phone. Nothing unusual. Just messages from Margaret about lunch, a reminder about a dentist appointment, spam calls I'd ignored. But my home phone was different. The landline still worked, tucked in the kitchen where it had been for 30 years. I barely used it anymore, but I kept it out of habit, out of sentiment. I dialed into the voicemail system and entered my PIN. You have 4 saved messages. Saved, not new. Someone had already listened to them. The first message was from my dentist's office. The second was from the power company confirming a payment. Nothing strange. The third message made my blood run cold. Mrs. Brennan, this is Kevin from First National Bank, returning your call about adding an authorized user to your checking account. I've sent the forms to the email address you provided. Just fill them out and bring them to the branch, along with a photo ID for the person you're adding. Let me know if you have any questions. The message was dated October 3rd, 2 weeks ago. I never called the bank about adding an authorized user, but someone had. Someone who sounded enough like me to pass for me over the phone. I listened to it again, my pulse hammering in my ears, and realized with sick clarity what I was hearing. Not my voice, but a voice that had studied mine. The cadence, the tone, the way I pronounced certain words. Claire had called the bank, pretending to be me. The fourth message was even worse. Hi, Mom. It's me. Claire's voice, bright and casual. Just checking in. I left a casserole in your fridge. You sounded a little tired when we talked earlier, so I wanted to make sure you're eating. Call me back when you get this. Love you. It was dated 3 weeks ago. A normal message. Innocent. Except I'd never listened to it before, which meant Claire had access to my voicemail, had been checking my messages, listening to calls from banks and doctors and anyone else who might leave information she could use. How long had she been doing this? And how had she gotten my PIN? I sat there in the kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, playing that bank message over and over. And then I remembered something Rachel had said. If you can get recordings, they're the strongest evidence you can have. I grabbed my cell phone and held it up to the landline speaker, playing the message one more time. Recording Kevin's voice, confirming a call I never made. Recording the date stamp. Recording proof. When I finished, my hands were steadier. My mind was clearer. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This wasn't paranoia or confusion or grief making me imagine things. This was evidence. I saved the recording to 3 different places: my phone, my email, a USB drive I dug out of Robert's desk. Then I sat down and wrote out everything I could remember, every detail, every timeline, every conversation, the way Rachel had taught me. And as I wrote, one thought kept circling back, sharp and unavoidable. The voicemail from the bank was dated October 3rd, the day I'd buried my husband. Claire had called my bank, pretending to be me, while I was standing at Robert's grave. The invitation came 3 days later. Daniel called in the afternoon, his voice carefully casual. "Hey, Mom. Claire and I were thinking, why don't you come stay with us for a while? Just until you feel more settled." I was standing in the kitchen, the USB drive with the bank recording in my pocket like a weight. I am settled. You know what I mean? The house is so empty now. And Claire's worried you're isolated out there. Isolated. Another word added to the list. Confused. Forgetful. Declining. Isolated. "I like my house," I said. "I know you do. But it might be easier if you weren't alone all the time. We have that guest room. Claire's already made it up for you. You could stay as long as you want. As long as you want. Or as long as they decided." "Daniel, I appreciate the offer, but Mom," his voice dropped, took on that tone adults use with stubborn children. "Claire's been really patient. She's been trying to help you, and you keep pushing her away. It's starting to hurt her feelings." I closed my eyes. This isn't about her feelings. Then what is it about? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're refusing help you actually need. And that's starting to worry both of us. Both of us. Like they were a united front and I was the problem they had to solve together. "I'll think about it," I lied. "Good. Claire's going to call you later to work out the details." He hung up before I could say no. I stood there holding the phone, my mind racing. They wanted me in their house, under their roof, where Claire could monitor everything I did, everyone I talked to, every move I made without having to track me from a distance. The guest room was already made up. Like they'd been planning this. Like it was inevitable. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hi, Mrs. Brennan. This is Rachel Chun. I spoke with the attorney I mentioned. He can see you Monday at 2 p.m. if that works. His office is in Brookfield. Let me know." Monday. 4 days away. I typed back, "Yes, thank you." Another buzz. This time from Claire. "Hi, Mom. Daniel told you about the guest room. I'm so excited to have you here. I'll come by tomorrow to help you pack a bag. Around 10? Help me pack?" Like I couldn't choose my own clothes. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked through my house, my home for 40 years, and tried to see it through her eyes. What would she do if she had access to everything? Which drawers would she search? Which documents would she photograph? The thought made me nauseous. I went upstairs to the spare bedroom, the one that had been Daniel's before he moved out, and pulled open the closet. Boxers stacked in the back, old clothes, winter coats, and behind them, tucked in the corner where no one would think to look, Robert's old lockbox. I pulled it out and opened it with the key I kept on my keychain. Inside were the documents I didn't want anyone finding. The deed to the house, in my name only. Robert's life insurance policy, with me as the sole beneficiary. Our will, explicitly stating that everything went to me first, with Daniel as secondary only after my death. I photographed every page. Then I put them back, locked the box, and hid it somewhere new. Somewhere Claire wouldn't think to look even if she searched the whole house. The doorbell rang just as the sun was setting. I wasn't expecting anyone. Hadn't ordered anything. I went to the door slowly, checked the peephole. Claire stood on my porch, holding a casserole dish, smiling. I opened the door but didn't step back to let her in. "Claire? I wasn't expecting you." "I know. I just wanted to drop this off. Chicken and rice, your favorite." She tried to move past me, but I didn't budge. Her smile faltered. "Can I come in? I'm actually just heading to bed. At 7 o'clock. I'm tired." We stood there in the doorway, the casserole between us like a barrier. She studied my face, her expression unreadable. "You've been avoiding me," she said quietly. "I've been busy." Busy with what? Appointments? Errands. I met her eyes. My life. Something flickered across her face. Anger, maybe. Or frustration. I talked to Daniel. He said you're thinking about staying with us. I said I'd think about it. Mom. She set the casserole down on the porch railing. I know you're upset with me. I don't fully understand why, but I can tell. And I want to fix it. I want us to go back to how things were. How things were. When I didn't know what she was doing. When I trusted her. Things change, I said. They don't have to. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something softer, more pleading. Your family. You're Daniel's mother? I love you. And I hate seeing you struggle alone when we could help. She sounded so sincere, so genuinely hurt. And for half a second, I almost believed her. Almost thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was seeing threats where there were none. Maybe grief really had made me paranoid. Then I noticed something. Her purse was open, hanging from her shoulder. And inside, I could see the edge of something familiar. Navy blue. Slim. The notebook. She'd brought it with her. Was probably planning to update it with today's date. Today's interaction. Whatever information she could gather from this visit. I need to go, I said. Thank you for the casserole. I closed the door before she could respond, locked it, and stood there in the hallway, my heart pounding. Through the window, I watched her stand on the porch for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone, typed something, and walked to her car. But she didn't leave. She sat there in my driveway, engine running, staring at her phone. Then she lifted it, angled it toward my house, and I realized with cold certainty what she was doing. Taking a photo, or maybe recording a video. I stepped away from the window, my pulse racing. When I looked again 5 minutes later, she was gone. But in the spot where her car had been, something glinted in the porch light. I opened the door carefully and looked down. A small black device, no bigger than a quarter, stuck to the underside of my mailbox. A camera. Ring camera? Probably. One of those motion-activated ones that sends alerts straight to your phone. She'd installed it without asking. Without telling me. And now she could see everyone who came to my door, every time I left, every time I came home. I left it there. Didn't touch it. Didn't give her any reason to know I'd noticed. But as I locked the door and drew the curtains, one thought burned clear and bright. If she was watching my house now, what else had she already set up that I hadn't found yet? The attorney's office was nothing like the one Claire had chosen. This one was downtown, on the 3rd floor of a building that had actual security. Rachel met me in the lobby Monday afternoon, and we rode the elevator up together in silence. I was carrying a folder thick with evidence. Bank statements, photos of the notebook, the recording of the voicemail, pictures of the Ring camera I'd found. My hands weren't shaking anymore. James Mitchell turned out to be younger than I expected, maybe 50, with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. He listened without interrupting while I laid everything out on his desk. Rachel had already briefed him, but he wanted to hear it from me. When I finished, he sat back in his chair. Mrs. Brennan, what you're describing is elder financial abuse. Possibly attempted conservatorship fraud. The good news is, you've documented it thoroughly. What happens now? Now we take action. First, I'm filing paperwork with the court, establishing that you are competent and that any future attempts to declare otherwise require independent medical evaluation. He pulled up a form on his computer. Second, we're notifying your bank formally that Claire Brennan has no authority over your accounts and that any previous communications claiming otherwise were fraudulent. Will they believe it? They will when we play them that voicemail. He smiled grimly. Voice impersonation to access financial accounts is a felony. The bank will take it very seriously. Rachel leaned forward. We're also documenting the surveillance, the notebook, the Ring camera. That establishes a pattern of control and monitoring without consent. Mitchell nodded. I'm going to recommend you file a police report as well. Not because I think they'll arrest her immediately, but because it creates an official record. If this escalates, we want every interaction documented. What about my son? I asked quietly. He believes her. He thinks I'm the one who's confused. That's common in these cases. The abuser isolates the victim by controlling the narrative. Mitchell's expressions slipped, but once we present the evidence, the voicemail, the unauthorized access, the documented tracking, it becomes much harder to claim this was just concerned family help. We spent the next hour going through paperwork. Mitchell drafted letters to the bank, to Dr. Patterson's office, to the attorney Claire had contacted, each one clearly stating that I was competent, that I had not authorized anyone to act on my behalf, and that any claims to the contrary were fraudulent. He printed everything out, had me sign where needed, and assembled a packet that looked official and irrefutable. "I'm sending these out today," he said. "Certified mail, so we have proof of delivery. The bank should freeze any pending changes within 48 hours. And Claire? She'll receive a cease and desist letter informing her that any further attempts to access your accounts, medical information, or legal affairs without your written consent will result in legal action." He paused. "Mrs. Brennan, I want you to understand something. This letter will likely make her angry. People who do what she's been doing don't usually back down quietly. I know. Do you feel safe in your home?" I thought about the Ring camera, the key Daniel still had, the way Claire showed up unannounced. "I don't know," Rachel spoke up. "We can arrange for temporary monitoring if needed. And you should change your locks. Today," Mitchell added, "before those letters arrive." I left his office with copies of everything, Rachel walking me to my car. The afternoon sun was bright and warm, but I felt cold. "You did the right thing," Rachel said. "I know it doesn't feel like it yet, but you did. My son is going to hate me. Your son is going to have to face the truth." She squeezed my arm gently, and sometimes that takes time. "But the evidence doesn't lie." I drove home, those words circling in my mind. The evidence doesn't lie. The locksmith came that evening, changed the locks on both doors, the deadbolts, even the basement entrance. When he left, I had new keys on a ring that only I possessed. It felt like the first real boundary I'd set in months. 2 days later, the bank called. "Mrs. Brennan, this is Kevin. I'm calling about the letter we received from your attorney." His voice was different now. Formal. Careful. "We've reviewed your account activity and found several irregularities. We're reversing the address change request and flagging your account for additional security measures. Thank you. We also found the voicemail you referenced. We've compared it to our records and, well, we're taking this very seriously. We've filed an internal fraud report and notified our security department." I closed my eyes. What does that mean? It means if anyone tries to access your account claiming to be you, we'll require in-person verification with photo ID. And we've noted that. Claire Brennan has no authorized access to any of your accounts. When I hung up, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief exactly, but something close. That night, my phone rang. Daniel's number. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Mom?" His voice was tight, controlled. "I just got a very interesting call from Claire." I waited. "She said you hired a lawyer, that you're accusing her of fraud, that you've lost your mind." "I have evidence, Daniel." "Evidence of what?" "That she tried to help you and you freaked out. Evidence that she impersonated me to the bank. That she's been tracking my movements for months. That she tried to gain power of attorney without my knowledge." My voice was steady now. "I can prove all of it." Silence. Long enough that I thought he'd hung up. "I don't believe you," he said finally. "Then come to the bank with me. Listen to the voicemail. See the records." "Mom, I'm not confused. I'm not declining. And I'm not going to let anyone take away my autonomy because it's convenient for them." I hung up before he could respond. And for the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. The final letter arrived on a Thursday morning. Not for me. For Claire. I knew because Daniel showed up at my door that afternoon, his face pale, holding a piece of paper like it might burn him. "Is this true?" he asked. I looked at the letter. Mitchell's firm letterhead. Legal language about fraud, impersonation, unauthorized access. A demand that all surveillance be removed and all contact cease unless expressly invited by me. "Yes," I said. He stood on my porch with the new locks he couldn't open anymore, and I watched something break in his face. Not anger. Something worse. Understanding. "She said you were confused, that you needed help." I know what she said. She played me a voicemail. "You sounded tired, forgetful." His voice cracked. "I thought I was protecting you. You were protecting her story about me." He flinched. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know she." He stopped, looked down at the letter again. "The bank called her. They said someone accessed your account fraudulently. They have a recording." "I know. She's saying it wasn't her. That someone must have stolen her phone. Do you believe that?" He didn't answer right away. When he looked up, his eyes were red. "I want to hear the recording." I let him in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd eaten breakfast as a child, where Robert and I had paid bills and planned vacations and built a life. I pulled up the recording on my phone and played it. Kevin's voice, professional and clear. "Returning your call about adding an authorized user." Then the date stamp. October 3rd. "That's the day we buried Dad," Daniel whispered. "I know." He listened to it twice more, his face getting paler each time. Then he set the phone down carefully, like it might shatter. "She called them from the funeral. Or right after, while I was still there." Jesus. He put his head in his hands. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I need you to hear something else," I said. I showed him the notebook. The tracked routines, the account numbers, the attorney consultation she'd scheduled without my knowledge, the medical appointments she'd arranged based on symptoms I didn't have. With each page, he got quieter. "She said she loved you," he said finally. "That she was worried about you being alone." I'm sure she believed that. People can convince themselves that control is the same as care. He looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in months. "You're not confused at all, are you?" "No. And I've been," his voice broke. "God, I've been telling you that you were. You believed someone you trusted. That's not a crime. It feels like one." He wiped his eyes roughly. "What do you need from me?" The question caught me off guard. "What?" "To fix this. To make it right. What do you need?" I thought about it. About the weeks of gaslighting, the fear, the isolation. About almost losing myself to someone else's narrative. "I need you to believe me," I said simply. "Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it means accepting that someone you love did something terrible." He nodded slowly. "Okay. And I need you to understand that I'm setting boundaries now. With both of you." Does that mean he stopped? Are we okay? You and me? I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, who'd chosen his wife's version of reality over mine until the evidence was too loud to ignore. "We're going to be," I said. "But it's going to take time." He stayed for an hour. We talked about practical things, the locks I'd changed, the attorney's letters, the bank's fraud investigation. He offered to remove the Ring camera himself, to talk to Claire, to set boundaries, to make sure she understood this was over. I told him I'd think about it. After he left, I sat in the quiet of my house with my locks, my accounts, my life intact, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not the kind that comes from resolution. The kind that comes from knowing you fought for yourself and won. The bank restored the small transfers Claire had made. Dr. Patterson updated my file to note there had been false reports from a family member. The attorney she'd contacted sent a letter confirming the appointment had been canceled and noting the attempted fraud. One by one, the pieces of my life that had been pulled away came back under my control. Claire never contacted me directly. According to Daniel, she'd hired her own attorney. Was claiming she'd only been trying to help, that I'd misunderstood, that the recordings were taken out of context. It didn't matter. The truth was documented now. Official. Irrefutable. 3 weeks later, I was sitting on my porch with coffee, watching the morning light filter through the trees, when Margaret pulled into my driveway. "Thought you might want company?" she said, holding up a bag of muffins. We sat together in comfortable silence, the kind you can only have with someone who's known you for decades. "You doing okay?" she asked eventually. "I am." "Good. You scared me for a while there?" "I scared myself." She squeezed my hand. "But you figured it out. That's what matters." I thought about that. About Rachel's card in my wallet. About the recording that proved I'd been telling the truth. About the moment I'd decided to fight instead of disappear. "Yeah," I said. "I figured it out." Later, I'd go through my mail, pay my bills, manage my own life the way I'd been doing for 50 years. I'd call Rachel to thank her. Maybe call Daniel to see how he was doing. But right now, I just sat with my friend, drinking coffee, watching my neighborhood wake up. And I realized something. Justice doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it just looks like getting your life back. Sometimes it looks like keeping the receipts. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you've ever lived through something like this,